Welcome, passenger. This is why you should never park on Lover's Lane. There's something magical about Lover's Lanes. They're always in the same kinds of places, just far enough from town to feel private. A quiet turnout, a dirt road near a lake, a patch of gravel overlooking the water or the trees. Placid, quiet places. The kind of place teenagers and young couples have gone to for decades. To talk, to kiss, to escape the noise of the world for a little while, and do private things together. But the thing about places like that is that they're also a little too quiet. And sometimes that quiet hides things. Or, in the case of tonight's true tale, someone. On the night of December 20th, 1968, two teenagers drove out to a lonely stretch of road just outside Vallejo, California. The road was called Lake Herman Road. It cut through open countryside, dark fields, rolling hills, and long stretches of absolutely nothing. No street lights, and no houses close by. Just a narrow road, and the kind of darkness you only get far from the city, far from safety. 17-year-old David Faraday was driving. In the passenger seat was 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen. It was only their first or second date. Young, nervous, excited. It was going to be the kind of evening you remember for the rest of your life. Or at least, you're supposed to. They pulled into a gravel turnout along the road sometime after 10 p.m. thereabouts. It was a place locals knew well. A classic lover's lane. Quiet, out of the way, hidden from passing traffic. To anyone driving by, it would just look like another parked car in the dark. Nothing unusual. At around 11:10 p.m., another car passed that turnout. The driver later said he noticed the couple's vehicle sitting there, facing the road. Everything looked normal, just two kids parked on a quiet night. But sometime in the next few minutes, something changed dramatically. Around 11:15 p.m., another driver came down Lake Herman Road. This time the scene was different. The car was still there, but the passenger door was open, and a girl was lying on the ground beside it. The driver slowed down, confused. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe somebody needed help. But as he got closer, he realized something was very wrong. The girl wasn't moving, and a few feet away in the shadows was a young man slumped inside the car. Both of them had been shot. The driver sped off to get help. Within minutes, police were on the scene. Red and blue lights flashing across the empty courtside, cutting through the cold December air. What they found was brutal. Betty Lou Jensen had been shot multiple times in the back. Investigators believed she had tried to run. The footprints and the position of her body suggested that she had fled the car in terror, sprinting across the gravel and dirt, but she never made it far. David Faraday had been shot at close range while still inside the vehicle. One precise shot to the head. It didn't look like a robbery. Nothing had been taken. There was no sign of a struggle beyond the brief, desperate attempt to escape the attack. Just a quiet road, a parked car, and two young people whose night had ended in utter violence. At first, the murders seemed like a tragic but isolated incident, a random act of violence on a lonely road. But then, months later, another couple was attacked while parked in a similar spot. And then another. And then the letters started arriving. The letters were sent to newspapers. They contained strange symbols, coded messages, and chilling claims of responsibility for the murders. The writer of these letters called himself something new. He called himself the Zodiac. Suddenly, that quiet lover's lane on Lake Herman Road, where David and Betty lost their lives, wasn't just a crime scene anymore. It was the beginning. As a matter of fact, it was the first known attack of a killer who would terrorize Northern California, taunt police, and become one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history. But on that December night, no one knew any of that. All they knew was that two teenagers had gone out for a quiet date and never came home. Investigators tried to piece together what had happened in those final moments. The theory that emerged was simple and terrifying. Someone had driven up behind the couple's car. Maybe the headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. Maybe David thought it was just another driver looking for a place to park. Maybe he assumed it was someone turning around. But the other car didn't leave. Instead, the driver got out. He walked up to the passenger side, and at some point he pulled out a gun. Maybe he ordered them out of the car. Maybe he fired immediately. No one knows for sure. But the evidence suggests that David was shot first inside the vehicle. Betty Lou must have realized what was happening. Stricken with panic, she opened the door and ran into the darkness, across the gravel, across the cold ground, searching for safety or help, and finding nothing. Behind her, in the blackness of that empty road, someone raised a gun and fired again, and again, and again. The sound of gunshots would have echoed across the open fields. But there were no nearby houses, no one to hear, no one to come running. Just deafening silence. By the time the police arrived, of course the killer was long gone. There were no witnesses, no clear motive, and no real leads. Just a lonely stretch of road and 2 victims. And for months, that's where the story ended. Until the Zodiac made sure it didn't. Because whoever he was, well, he wanted attention. He wrote these letters to newspapers bragging about the killings. He included details that only the killer would know. He demanded his messages be printed on the front page. He spoke about the murders almost casually, like they were a game. Like the victims were nothing more than pieces on a board. And the Lover's Lane on Lake Herman Road was his first move. To this day, no one knows exactly who the Zodiac Killer was. Suspects have come and gone. Names have been thrown around. Some seemed convincing, others fell apart under scrutiny. But no one was ever charged. David and Betty's killer remained at large. And the murders at that lonely Lover's Lane remain the first chapter in a story that still hasn't ended. If you drive down Lake Herman Road today, it doesn't look especially sinister. It's still just a quiet stretch of road. Open land, rolling hills, long shadows at night. But if you know the story, it feels different. It becomes infamous. You start to imagine the headlights appearing behind you. A car pulling in, an engine idling in the dark. A door opening, footsteps on gravel, and the realization that there's nowhere to run. Because lovers' lanes are meant to feel private, hidden, romantic, but sometimes they're just the perfect place for someone who doesn't want to be seen. So if you ever find yourself driving down a quiet road at night, and you see a lonely turnout in the distance, maybe with another car already parked there, you might want to keep driving. You're safer driving, because some roads remember what happened on them, and those places never really forget, and they have a way of worming into your subconscious to make sure that you never forget. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next drive.